Para planejar o futuro, é preciso entendê-lo. Por isso é que é tão importante conhecer tendências e cenários para os próximos anos. E já que o tema do 15º Congresso Brasileiro do Cooperativismo foi construindo um futuro mais COOP, nada mais adequado do que uma apresentação da maior futurista da atualidade. Amy Webb é a principal mente por trás do Future Today Institute, organização que todos os anos lança um extenso relatório antecipando as grandes tendências de tecnologia, ciência, inovação e sociedade. E eu vou conversar com ela sobre futuro, negócios e cooperativismo. So, before anything, we're very pleased to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. And let's start our talk. And we'd like to start by talking about AI. It seems that new tools that employ generative artificial intelligence are cropping up by the minute in a wide variety of activities. And I'd like to know, how can businesses navigate through so much new content and filter out which are the most valuable, which can increase their productivity and generate positive results for the cooperatives?
This is a very tricky time to be a business person because the world is changing. Geopolitics is changing. The economy is changing. There are a record number of elections all around the world this year. But of course, we now have artificial intelligence. To be fair, artificial intelligence is not a new technology. It's been around for a really long time, but most businesses have never really had to think about artificial intelligence because they were doing other types of things. Now it feels like suddenly everybody has to know everything about AI and be an expert, and I know it's overwhelming. So what I would think is a good idea right now is to spend some time just learning what is artificial intelligence, what is artificial intelligence not. When we talk about generative AI, what do we actually mean? If you give yourself a couple of hours to do some reading, and then find somebody in your network who really is an expert and just ask them basic questions. Honestly, that alone will put you far ahead of a lot of other people right now. And I think it'll be really helpful in preparing you for what comes next.
I think that's a great tip for our cooperatives that are starting to keep up with these all of these new tools and technologies. And the next question I'd like to ask you, you have spoken and foreseen a tech super cycle, which involves artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, and biotechnology too. And we'd like to know, what can this phenomenon represent for cooperatives?
There is something called a technology super cycle, which my team and I discovered. I guess it's been almost a year now. We discovered this new type of cycle starting. So throughout history, there have been economic super cycles that are categorized by many years, sometimes decades of change. So increased commodity prices, increased economic activity, growth of GDP, things like that. And typically those economic super cycles start from an inflection point. So when the steam engine was invented, that led to the Industrial Revolution. That was an economic super cycle that lasted for many, many years and had a huge change on society and the economy. Right now, we don't just have one technology, we have three, as you mentioned. So that's artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and sort of sensors. And here's why that's really important for Brazil, because a lot of Brazil's industries that are really 20th century industries. And by that, I mean, they started in the 20th century. They really changed the economy of Brazil, but also the rest of the world. And these are industries that need to, I think, improve and modernize, maybe a little bit faster than they have been. And for co-ops, especially, this is a model that doesn't exist in a lot of other places around the world. And what's kind of great about the co-op system in Brazil is that you're connected to each other. So you can talk to each other about, are there ways that we might be able to modernize? People have talked about the digital transformation for a long time, and now there's an AI transformation. How are we supposed to, how are we supposed to do that? So talking to each other, getting best practices, thinking as sort of an industry, how can we help each other push the whole industry ahead? I know it feels like that will introduce competition, and nobody wants to lose to anybody else. From my point of view, what this actually does is make you all more competitive, because Brazil is also going to face outside competitors in new ways that it just hasn't before. So I think it's really, really important right now. I mean, I think co-ops are quite important, but especially in Brazil, because I think everybody has to sort of get together and push forward into the future.
Yeah, I think that's a great asset to cooperatives. That's the collaborative model of working, and truly these changes, they are both a challenge and an opportunity, right? And I think cooperatives do have a lot of work to do. So the next question that I had is, well, we know that all these changes, they're here to stay, and we'd like to know, how can cooperatives keep up and ride on these trends of these upcoming new features and tools and technologies? How can we ride these trends without losing track of efficient day-to-day management best practices?
Yeah, so that's a tough one. There is a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. I am positive that it was published in Brazil because it was published everywhere, by an economist named Dan Kahneman. And so he describes sort of the two sides of the brain and thinking fast and thinking slow. At any rate, I would apply the same approach to business. So you do have to manage day-to-day operations and execution. And I think every company has to get really good at doing that, because it makes you more efficient. It helps you meet your margins. It helps you grow, all of those things. But if you get caught in that cycle of just trying to improve your margins and just getting more efficient and operations execution over and over and over again, you start losing what's happening outside. And this is where a lot of companies, and especially a lot of leaders, get really stuck, because it feels like you should dedicate all of your energy and time to what you can control, and ultimately to those balance sheets, right? But there's a world outside that you should also be tracking. So our advice is always to sort of do both. You have to get good at strategy and execution and operations, of course, but you also have to look ahead and think about your vision for the future and what does transformation look like. So you kind of have to do that longer term strategic planning. You have to do the longer term scenario planning and simply asking what if over and over again, while you are working on the day-to-day operations. You can do both. So there are plenty of examples of great leaders and really profitable companies, or for nonprofits, organizations that are very well managed, that are able to do both. But you have to make a decision that you're going to prioritize both. And then, most leaders understand execution and strategy. Vision and transformation and all the scenario stuff, that is a different skill set. So you can learn how to do it, and you should, and you can develop capabilities in your organizations, but that's really what's required going forward.
Yeah, it seems like a delicate balance, but I'm sure that your insight is extremely valuable and helpful for us to move forward in that sense. We're moving on to the last question already, Amy. And I just like to remember a little bit, because you spoke at the 15th Brazilian Congress. Sorry, you spoke at the 15th Brazilian Cooperative Congress, which had the theme of building a more cooperative future. And We'd like to know, how do you see the role of institutions like cooperatives that are more collaborative and decentralized in dealing with the problems, challenges, and dilemmas that these digital era brings forth, such as data property and the platformization of work?
Sure, I can give you a great example because right before this, I was on a call with one of our clients, and we're working with them on a giant project related to artificial intelligence. So, and the future. So we're meeting with their executives, and they had been doing all of this work internally. So today's meeting was really a chance for us as outsiders to look at this work and offer some suggestions. So anyhow, meticulous work. They're going through all these things. And at the end, we said, what about intellectual property? And they were like, wait, what? And we were like, that feels like something you guys should be thinking about given what you do. Anyhow, my point is they had done really great work, but it kind of gone down this rabbit hole and had gotten way to the end. And in the meantime, had totally forgotten about this other very important area. What I think this illustrates is that this is a very challenging time because there are so many other considerations that leaders have to think about that they didn't have to think about before. And so having outsiders or people in your industry or members of those co-ops to bounce those ideas off of, to offer feedback, you can't, we're kind of in this situation right now where you can't go it alone anymore. The world is too challenging. Things are there's too much. So you really need to have a team around you, making sure you don't forget things, asking really challenging questions, sort of pushing back. You really need that right now. We all do. That's the best way to really prepare for the future. And again, I think this is where co-ops in Brazil can play a pretty good role because you've got this built-in membership of people that you can learn from, obviously, but also like, what are we forgetting? What's happening in artificial intelligence or any other area of technology? Help us understand what's happening around the world. I think this is going to be really key going forward. And then again, the nice thing is you've got this built-in network of people that you should be able to talk to help you think things through.
Yeah, I think that's extremely interesting, and it shows that the democratic management of cooperatives can really be a positive change and can be something that can build a more cooperative future, right? Um, so yeah, Amy, that's all the questions that we had. I'd like to thank you once again for talking with us, for participating in our Congress, and I'm sure all of your knowledge and experience will serve greatly to the cooperatives that want to follow in this path of innovation and keeping up with the current trends and planning for the future. So thank you very much once again.
Awesome. Thank you.